Okay, so let's get into how companies try to develop synergy, not strategy. The first is they try to develop economies of scope. This is different than economies of scale. Economies of scale talk about physically getting better. Economies of scope are about transferring or sharing things that allow you to develop synergy. So when it says share activities, and we'll talk about these in more detail in just a couple of minutes, that means that you have common processes in the businesses that you're able to do different places. For example, it may be that you have a plant that's got some functions to it that support multiple product lines. The second is that you try to transfer some of those intangible resources. It could be just brand name. It could also be some of your core competencies as you try to create synergy through sharing. The next way is going back to a Porter's Five Forces perspective, and that is to say that we try to develop market power because we control more of the market. And I've got a great illustration for that. Then there's the idea of unrelated diversification, which says the businesses don't really have much in common, but we are able to get more from them. Why are they better together? And the answer is because we are really good managers. We're good at doing financial planning. That would be, or I'm sorry, financial. We're very good at leading businesses. That would be corporate parenting advantages. We're very good at spotting an undervalued business, buying it, perhaps turning it around, and then selling it for a much higher price, and sometimes to restructure. So let me give you an illustration of a company that you're very familiar with and show you their diversification strategy, and that would be Honda. So you see this lovely expanding life potential through mobility. What is Honda in? Well, okay, they're in autos, to include their luxury brand Acura. They're also in motorcycles. Over here, this is cut off a little bit. Let me move it over. They are in lawn equipment and power generation, if you think of Honda generators. They are in racing. They are in marine stuff, general purpose engines, and Honda has its own business jet. And so then you get the idea of expanding life's potential through mobility, although some of these things are really through power. And you go, what's the common element there? And you would say it's engine technology, that Honda is great at making engines, although ironically enough, GE builds the engine for their business jet. So this is an example of how companies try to generate value through diversification. So let's talk about what are economies of scope. The first is the idea of sharing. The things that are most effective is when you share something, typically an intangible, that is hard to imitate or substitute for. So when you tap into something you do particularly well, and one of the greatest resources that you see companies tap into is their brand name. For example, Harley Davidson is a motorcycle, but how many clothing products do you see with Harley Davidson on them? Well, in a sense, that's a licensing business. Many cases, companies just approach Harley and ask them to use the logo and the like, and they sell it. I think Harley does some of it themselves as well. Virgin is another great brand. All sorts of Virgin Galactic, Virgin Atlantic. There was Virgin Airways in the United States until it got bought out. So the idea is you're trying to share something across. And often what you're sharing is this idea of we're really good managers. And then you have the idea of operational sharing, where you are sharing activities. Like I say, you could be sharing a plant, you could be sharing distribution channels so that you're delivering two very different types of products through the same logistics network. And as I illustrated with the Christmas tree lighting and lawn service business, sometimes you're cross-selling your customers. They become familiar with you and you have a way to sell more to them. Again, I don't want you to worry about this related constrained and related linked. What I care about is that you see the general progression of diversification. So if a company is both sharing core competencies, or I should say core competencies that's corporate relatedness, and operational activities, that's a fairly low level of diversification. And so in the book, that would be the example of UPS, where they're not straying very far from what they do. Now, let's assume that they begin to deviate either away from I'm tripping myself up here. So you see the two axes. How much are they transferring core competencies and how much are they sharing activities? If they're sharing activities but no core competencies, that becomes a little bit higher level of diversification. If they're sharing corporate relatedness but no activities, that again is a little bit higher of corporate relatedness. If you come down here, or corporate diversification, I should say, if you come down here and you're not trying to share anything, then that becomes a very high level of diversification, which is usually referred to as unrelated diversification, and I do want you to remember that term. I'm going to stop the video now, and we're going to get into Procter & Gamble because it is a poster child of relatedness in the next video.